The toxic masculinity spiel that you love so much and is at the center of your work, Attila, might actually make sense when pointed at some of these cultures. Hi, my name is Jen, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Atilla Yoldas is a male feminist and writer at one of the biggest newspapers here in Sweden, Expressen. I have made videos on him previously. I have read his articles and followed his Instagram where he posts frequently, and I also have his book, this one. I have a review of this book up on my channel. It's unfortunately in Swedish, but there are English subtitles. One could say that I am quite familiar with his work. He is actually one of my absolute favorite feminists. Not because he is particularly bright or anything, but because he exemplifies the male feminist and all of my issues with them very, very well. I have seemed to struck a nerve with this guy, as he does have me blocked on Instagram. So I have to assure you that this video is not to clown on him in any way. This is not meant to be disrespectful to him. This is just meant to report on the article that he has written and dispute some of the things that he said. And yeah, let's get into it. Hate against women seems to always be a problem most frequent amongst other men from other cultures. Threats, harassments, molestations, abuse, violence. It becomes for some reason us and them very quickly when we talk about it. We learn a lot about the writer's worldview in just this preamble. To understand the basis for all of Atilla Yoldas' work, one may just have a look at these sentences. Attila Yoldas lays out a problem here, and that problem is that we seem to have a tendency towards separating men who commit violent crimes from those who do not. And in his perspective, regular men cannot separate themselves from criminals. All men are the same and are equally as likely to cut off the heads of their ex-girlfriend, to gang rape, or to commit senseless murder. He denies that migrants, or that certain migrants, for example, are overrepresented in some of these statistics. This is actually also how he resonates across all spectrum of criminality. He sees masculinity as the inherent cause to senseless evil, and doesn't account for psychopathy or any form of mental illness, upbringing, parental abuse. He believes that any boy can and will grow up to be a serial rapist or a murderer if the root cause of masculinity is not resolved. His solution to the problem of criminality is male collective guilt cross-culturally and early indoctrination into feminist ideology, which teaches boys to hate masculinity completely. The fact that unchecked masculine power will differ culture to culture is not interesting, unless it is to point at the white man, of course. Only the unifying concept of men commit more crime than women is interesting to him. And he continues, us Swedes, those blonde, blue-eyed, ethnic Swedish boys and men that have carried family names which end in son throughout observable history. Them, immigrants, those dark, mystical, ethnic, non-Swedish boys and men who in some people's eyes will never be regarded as us, no matter the contribution. It's not unusual that the latter named group, with their origins in all corners of the world, get brought up when misogyny and violence towards women is discussed, and it's not unusual for this group to be painted as the only group responsible for the problems in Sweden. What he is trying to argue here and in the rest of the article is that we cannot assume that violent crime occurs only in cultures far away from us and that Swedish men do not commit crimes. He does this in a way to paint his opposition as bigots unwilling to accept that Swedish men commit crimes. Of course they do. That portrayal of that argument is a straw man. We need to, however, be able to talk about the overrepresentation of certain types of migrants in certain types of crimes in order to have an honest discussion about how we manage them. For example, we need to be talk about how the men that we are bringing into this country in masses view women, how some of these men view women differently than us, and how they are raised to treat women differently than us. The reality is that these cultures are not marinated in the progressive ideals that Atilla Yoldas so strongly hold. The toxic masculinity spiel that you love so much and is at the center of your work, Attila, might actually make sense when pointed at some of these cultures. A lot of these men have vastly different views on crimes against each other, and they define and interpret oppression of women differently. Feminists are always talking about toxic masculinity and of traditional gender roles as institutions in need of abolition, but they are unable to point their criticism at any place or any people other than the most progressive, who are so far ahead and who have created the most equal societies that we have. It's impossible to take seriously. Atilla Yoldas then goes on to describe a man that he has had an argument with on social media. This is actually the meat of the article. So he bases the entire article off of a discussion he had with a random unspecified guy. If this was any other journalist, I would question the legitimacy that paints his work in, but he has, in his past, he has written an entire article on how he was crying about adopting a dog and comparing that to bringing home your first. Okay, I'm sorry, I just have to quickly interrupt this video to just show you what this article is that I'm talking about. So this says in Swedish, "Why do so many dads refuse to say these words?" And it says here, "The tears have run multiple times since we picked her up." And here's a quote, "Oh, I love her. Oh, I love her. I've said it so many times out loud. And I love you to her with a silly, warm voice, even though she doesn't understand. The feeling of the new responsibility takes place in my chest when I see our little baby moving carefully in their bed, making themselves at home. Sometimes she searches for our gaze with her eyes. Me and Joanna have finally received our much-awaited addition, but not in a classical way. You cannot call us a family, and I cannot, without feeling extremely embarrassed, call myself a dad." Because our 5-month-old daughter is a Siberian Husky. And this article is about how dads don't say that they love their children enough. And it's so fucking stupid. And okay, yeah, let's just move on. His articles don't really tend to, we'll just let it slip. Let's pretend that this discussion did take space, did happen, and that this is a legitimate way to journalism. And let's continue.
Smell shame.
The guy he is talking to makes the case that rape is an entirely imported issue. The fact behind that statement would be that it has been shown that migrants are overrepresented in some of the rape statistics, and that we have had an increase in rapes in direct correlation with the increase in immigration. Does that mean that we would not have any rapes if we didn't have any immigration to Sweden? Of course it doesn't. But Atilla Yoldas goes in a different direction than to talk about how we can't blame all crimes on just immigrants, and he starts talking about sex work instead. And he points to a statistic that shows that 1 out of 10 Swedish men buy sex abroad, in an effort to show that Swedish men do break the Swedish laws and do disrespect women, because buying sex is illegal here in Sweden. So his argument is that, well, they want to break the Swedish laws, but they go abroad to break the Swedish laws and have sex with prostitutes. But I don't believe that buying prostitutes is a honorable thing to do. I have my oppositions to that. But the Swedish feminists go a bit too far on this, and they claim that all forms of buying sex is rape. So in Attila Yoldas' reasoning here, then that means that the Swedish man is a rapist, that 1 in 10 Swedish men are rapists. So let's have a look at the statistics that he points at. because it's not necessarily correct or reliable. Rebecca Weidmo dove into the statistics, and this is what she found. The actual wording is 1 out of 10 men have bought sex sometime in their life. So it's not about men continuously going abroad to buy prostitutes, as the statistics has been categorized previously in media. The statistics is based off of a questionnaire that was sent out to 50,000 people, where only 31% actually responded. So it's only a 31% correspondence to it. The definition of buying sex was to receive sex for some sort of compensation, which didn't have to be monetary, like alcohol, clothes, a place to sleep, etc. Moreover, their definition of sex also pertained to sexual favors online, to touch another person or for that person to touch you. Not only regular intercourse was counted for. And the most crucial part that she brings up is that 70% of correspondents didn't even answer this particular question. So the statistical relevance is utterly minuscule. The statistic that 1 out of 10 men buying sex has been popularized here in Sweden as a way to portray Swedish men as rapist scum. Because remember, and this is important for the next part, remember that buying sex and raping someone is the same thing, according to Attilla Yoldas and according to the feminists here. Remember that. Because the funny thing is, you cannot make this up, the same day that Attila Yoldas released this article, a study came out from Swedish radio showing that 78% of those prosecuted for buying sex in Uppsala, Sweden, were migrants. And if it can't get any better, Swedish radio, who released this report, came out a day after to make excuse for this, stating, "It's due to a lack of knowledge of the law, partially because the migration agency have yet to instate obligatory social introduction." It's so stupid! Oh my god, do you hear that? Yeah. Okay. Since buying sex is equivalent to rape in the eyes of the modern feminists, and Western men are no better than immigrants from all corners of the world, why do we have to teach the men coming here to not rape? When it's the white Swedish man buying sex, it's disgusting. But when it's a migrant man, it's suddenly about the law and not about the women that he supposedly abused. So for example, when it's a Swedish man going over to a legal brothel in Denmark to buy sex from a legal adult prostitute, it's rape. In this case, we have to talk about the woman who has been victimized by this man. We have to talk about this Swedish man's misogynistic view of women and his abuse of power. But when it's a migrant who buys sex illegally in Sweden, the public has no idea how to categorize it, because a migrant man in Sweden has a victim status himself. It becomes all about how evil the state is for not giving him the right tools for integration. A migrant man is forgiven for this supposed abuse of women because we cannot expect a poor migrant to understand that it's bad or oppressive.
What? What the fuck?
If you're familiar with how things work in Sweden, I'm sure that this will not surprise you. I think there's a saying for this view of, yeah. Thank you so much for watching my video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more like this video, if you like this video, and leave a respectful comment down below on what you think. I want to give an extra thank you to all of my Patreons, who are Ya T. Smith, Mark Swartzberg, John Patrick, Michael Edelius, Craig Nickerson, Jim Hicks, Daniel Yu, Graham P. Mills, Andreas Springare, Jocke Hellgren, Capt. A. Larson, Helmut Beal, Robert T. O'Gara, Chuck Schaefer, Aiden Finn, Oskar Sandström, Sonja Alriksson, Crowley357, Brennan Bauer, Tobias Schumacher, Ivan Akarius, Adrian Betts, Gabriel Tika, ASDF, Are Håkansson, Vyacheslav, Eric Bishop, Tim Bennett, Tony Patak, Liam McCarthy, Patriarken, Benjamin Dolby, Kasper Öberg, Proud Boy, Steve Olmoon, John Cheresna, Scott Allen, Benedict Block, Ivan Andreda Mendoza, Don Lindberg, Jessica Weiner, Ville Nari, Aaron Castile, Tobias Ingvarsson, and Nils Öster. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one.